Welcome back. This is Jade Hindman, and you're listening to KPBS Midday Edition. So this Black History Month, we're celebrating local Black leaders across every field, from art to community organizing, even hair care and wellness. I mean, you can find trailblazers in every space. My next guest is making waves in the education space as president of San Diego Mesa College. Before that, she served as vice president and dean of Mesa College and UC San Diego. Dr. Ashanti Hands joins me now. Welcome back to Midday Edition. Dr. Hands, can you hear us? Dr. Hands, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I got you now.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on again. Let me ask you this, because I understand that your passion for social justice and education actually started back in fourth grade. Tell me a bit about that story.
Oh, my goodness. So I think as a fourth grader, I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and we were bused to a predominantly white upper middle class neighborhood. And I'm not sure if our listeners are familiar with what it means to be bused, but it means that our entire fourth grade class was taken out of our school. We caught the bus very early in the morning, and we attended another school. And there were just things that I had observed there, and people were very much interested in what we thought about that experience. But then as a fourth grader, I asked the question, what did their students think about being at our school? And when I learned that they didn't send any students to our school, I think that was where that seed of unrest was planted in my soul, that just had this question about what was it that they felt we needed to see in this other environment that maybe other students didn't need to see or learn about our environment. And ever since then, I didn't know that it was called equity. I didn't know that it was called social justice, but my heart had a leaning towards those types of questions and ways of seeing and experiencing education.
It's great that you were aware of that back in the fourth grade. I mean, that passion that was garnered back then continued through high school, where you advocated actually for education access and opportunity. What did that look like for you?
That for me, I'm born and raised in Inglewood, California. And so when I went to all of these school systems, predominantly Black middle class neighborhood is where I went to school, and then went to these other places. And then our family experienced some misfortune. And so I ended up going to Inglewood High School. And I actually did not want to go. At the time, it was not an environment that was known to be nurturing of minds. But our principal at the time would not allow me to leave. He said, we need students like you here at Inglewood. And so he said, you're going to have to stay for 1 year and maybe we can consider. I ended up staying for 4 years, but even despite the fact that there was that feeling again about inequity, there was something different about the environment that I was learning in that didn't live up to those spaces that I had gone to in the fourth grade or the sixth grade or in middle school. And so there were a lot of opportunities for me to kind of challenge and push back on the system, to ask questions about the state of how we were being educated, the facilities. And in that pushback, I always chuckle because I say I got into trouble in high school, but I think it was the good trouble that we are familiar with. And just trying to say, like, I feel like there's so much more that we are deserving of, but that we weren't getting. And so there were things like I was called out to talk about college, but I always felt like I would get to college one way or the other, and was curious about other students when I would ask my peers, like, were you called out of class? And when I found out they weren't, I asked if I could use my free period to call people out of class and share information with them that was shared with me so that we could expand capacity and opportunities. And, there were a variety of other things that we did. I was one of those students who would sneak away from my friends and show up at school board meetings to provide the student voice. I was not very tactful in doing so, but my principal helped me learn how to do it with greater skill to match the conviction. So there were many opportunities. I stayed because I felt like that was the kind of space that was calling me to develop and to grow and to live into my purpose. So I
Yeah.
have all respect for Inglewood High School. I really feel like it helped ground and make me who I am
It's
today.
it's great when those seeds are planted early and you
Mhm.
water them and grow them. On that note, though, about Good Trouble, I mean, you've said you're really guided by John Lewis's advocacy there for that
Mhm.
principle. How does Good Trouble show up in your life?
I think good trouble shows up by pushing back against those things that are inequitable, that are unjust, that don't create space for all of us, in particular for me as my journey, a young Black woman, to be able to thrive and succeed. And so I feel like a part of what I did from fourth grade, we had the same opportunity in sixth grade to go back into this neighborhood. So I went there on my own choice at that point. And as sixth graders with my two best friends, we thought we got to get involved with leadership, right? Which is interesting for young people to think because we thought we've got to get a seat at the table, whatever that means in sixth grade for associated students. But we did that. And so that to me is really challenging systems, realizing that there are spaces and places that are not often created for us, but that we have the ability and the capacity to go into those spaces and to make change from the inside. And that is where I feel like I've done as an elementary student, as a, middle school student, as a high school student at Inglewood, who really tried to challenge those systems and really called for our professors and those administrators to treat us with the dignity that we were worth, or at least to articulate those things for us. And then now serving in this capacity and working in higher education, actually having a seat at the table where you can impact policies and procedures, right? Where you can show up in places and spaces to make sure that people understand that we see them, their worth, despite where they are coming from. And oftentimes not in spite of that, but because of who they are. And we take all of these things and we see it, we nurture it, we love it, we challenge it. And we encourage our students to grow. And so there's so many ways to do that. It could be through policy and procedure. It could be through making comments in meetings, right? To stand up and kind of push back on those things that are not quite equitable, or demonstrate an ethic of care. So there's so many ways to do it. I feel like me showing up um, provides great space for me to be able to push back and to get in good trouble. It's the type of trouble that leads to access, to equity, that leads to students understanding their worth, stepping boldly into who they were born to be. And so my personal why is to create the conditions that matter. And so that's how I get into good trouble, disrupting systems so that we can create the conditions that matter for our students to succeed.